cold this morning. Cold. A little bit of early March winter here hitting us, which is, I suppose, which is quite good. Got the SE going. This is my wood-burning stove. I light it not always early in the morning, but only when it's cold. It heats up the water. I can cook on it. I ought to get the kettle on. It won't be quite warm enough yet to put the kettle on. I'll leave it for about half an hour, and then it'll heat up the top plate, and it'll be nice and warm. The thing about the SE, what I love, not only will it warm up the house as well, I hang my washing up here in my kitchen. This is great because it makes me independent from the grid, you know, the electricity. I mean, obviously I have electricity. There's a light just up there illuminating me now, and there's the kitchen light on at the same time, just whilst I'm filming. But I buy my logs from a local chap. In fact, I've got some coming this morning as I film this in about an hour's time. So I don't mind lighting the SE in the morning knowing I've got another supply coming in. And he's a local chap. And I like to be able to give the money that I earn back into the locality so that it's supplying money and keeping the local economy going, rather than giving it to these big six or these other suppliers, so-called, who are charging us a fortune for fuel. So it makes me independent. And that's really the theme, I think, that we should be thinking about very much now. Being independent as much as we can from the system. We've spoken about that in terms of understanding how the trust works, that we're the executor of our trust and the sole beneficiary, and how we ought to correct the standing and things like that. And no doubt I'll talk about that again. But other ways to get out of the system and to be independent so that we take back responsibility for ourselves. I think that's so much of the solution at the moment. It's the small things that we can do. Of course, not everybody can have a wood-burning stove. I appreciate that. Not everybody has the facilities in their house. Not everybody will agree with it, because a number of people will have been dumbed down or coerced by the government and the mainstream narrative that all burning logs is a bad thing. And they'll start to believe all this sort of rubbish. And so they'll disagree with it. It's actually very nice and sitting here by this, and as I say, it has so many advantages, and of course the big six are not controlling me. So if there's a power cut, I'm independent. I think we need to be independent of government as much as we can. One of the biggest things that we really should do is to not watch the mainstream narrative. Get rid of the televisions, turn it off, get rid of the TV license. I've spoken about that before. It is actually one of the easiest things to do. You just ring them up or fill in their online thing and say, I don't want it. I don't want it. And they'll try and persuade you that you need it for whatever reason, but just say, no, I don't want it, thanks very much. And then they come back and say, well, okay, we'll ask you in 2 years' time if you want it. And they did that with me. And 2 years' time they came back and said, oh, do you still watch the television? Do you need the BBC? Do you need the live streaming and all of this? Do you need a license? No, thank you. Thank you very much, but no. And so I don't pay that. And they've gone away, and they haven't asked me since. So that's very easy. Some of the other systems, people are working out how to get out of those systems with the tax. I mean, clearly the tax where you're being forced to pay it, like in the council tax or inland revenue, if this is going to paying for armaments in wars which are nothing to do with this country, and that men, women and children are being killed by the fact that we're supplying money, we're aiding and abetting that. I'm not part of that, thanks very much. I don't want to be part of that. I'm not there to aid and abet. And of course it's illegal in their system to do that, so it's actually illegal to pay tax if the tax money is going to those things. So it means that just my morals say I can't pay it, and their legal system says I shouldn't pay it because I would be aiding and abetting terrorism. So to try and get out of that system, but we can do it in many other ways. If you don't feel strong enough to do that, we can get out of the system by not going to supermarkets, not buying the highly processed foods that are nutrient poor, chemical rich, and are damaging our bodies. We can get out of the system by not going to GPs anymore, that looking for alternative health, of which there are plenty of other practitioners with some amazing methods and all sorts of different ways, whether that's bioresonance or Rife machines, hypnosis, all sorts, acupuncture. I mean, I've interviewed numerous people on the show with different methods of how to get rid of pain and how to help one another with chronic problems. Obviously, if you have an accident and you've broken a bone and things like that, well, that's where the doctors are useful. But the GPs in their surgeries that are just pumping pills that have side effects, no thank you. The flu jab and the other thing, the medical intervention, I don't need any of that. I don't want your poisons, which are causing a lot of problems around the world. So I'm out of that system as well. Children should not be going to school, of course. That's an indoctrinating system. And people should perhaps think really hard about whether they want strangers whose morals they don't know, whose ethics they're not sure of, the curriculum they're not really told about, whether they want them influencing and telling their children how to live their lives and what they should learn. Perhaps mums and dads ought to be thinking about how best to bring up their own offspring. Maybe they should involve them much more in the day-to-day business of living, educate them as best they can, and instill or encourage that natural inquisitiveness that children have. They want to ask questions. The home would be the safest place, mostly, unless, of course, you happen to be in a difficult home environment, of course, and we saw that during the lockdowns, how that was not really thought of terribly well. Other ways of getting out of the system, of course, is trying to be independent from the corporations in your employment. It may be better, not easy, I admit, to set up your own business as much as you can, so that you don't have that hierarchy of people above you telling you how to live your life, what you should do, the hours that you should work. We do need to encourage more and more small family-run businesses, sole traders, back in the private, back independently, trading with one another and not doing commerce, which is what the corporations do, the dead entities. They try to get you to be in commerce. We want to trade, use as much independent cash free from the banks as we can. We've seen how the banks have been penalising. And ultimately, of course, people will be moving their money out of banks, the existing types of banks, into a new type of bank. I'm sure that these systems are coming on, whether people are using gold, and I know people will say, oh, gold, that's controlled, or silver, or small amounts of it, but other natural forms of currency, which is not the fiat currency, not the debt-based slavery currency. The more that we take back that control of our lives, the less we rely on fast food restaurants, delivery places, somebody else doing stuff for us. The less that we depend on all of that, and the more that we depend on ourselves, the more we make our own food. We could buy the raw ingredients by going to farm shops and markets and independent butchers and greengrocers where there are some, or get veg boxes from places like Riverford, places like that, or perhaps there's some local veg box schemes in your area. The more we can do that, these corporations, they rely on us, and we can take back, we have the power, that is the beauty. And the more we can get our families around the table and eat together, That would be an amazing responsibility. Don't let somebody else entertain your children or yourselves. Don't let somebody else provide that entertainment. It is wonderful to cook and to sit round a table and share your day like people used to do. Bring that family unit back together again. It is the most important unit that we have, that has been split up by all sorts of factions and so-called bodies that are there, these woke people who are telling us how we ought to live our lives. Let's live our lives how we want to, how we intrinsically, deep within ourselves, believe that we should be living. Live as independently and responsibly as we can. Take back that control for ourselves and don't let them rule our lives.